What's up, everyone? This is the Rival and Queen podcast. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Sarah.
And we are
Rival and queening is what I was just going to say.
We are doing all those things, but we just had a very eventful weekend, Sarah. Last weekend was...
We are so happy to be with you on this Thursday. We're still recovering from the fun.
We had a fun weekend. And yes, we were just trying to get our thoughts together.
Our bearings. So if we're... every week we do this. I'm like, we're nuts. But if we're a little nuts today, it's for different reasons. Because we're coming back to life after a hell of a celebration, which was basically just seeing our friends we hadn't seen in 4 months.
It was one of those times when everything just like aligned. Do you remember in university when you knew there was a big night or a party coming and you had so much anticipation around like getting ready and it was going to be so fun? That was one of those nights I felt like, and sometimes they're disappointing. They're not what you think, but this night was more.
Oh my God. It's like, it came together in the best way. Extra people joined in. We were all home mid-afternoon with nothing to do but get ready and prepare mentally for the...
You really got ready.
What did I do?
I mean, like you had a fancy... Sarah said, Sarah got a fancy top on. Someone wrote us. You did.
Guys, I love this so much. I spent the whole night telling everyone I looked like the Black Swan and Cruella de Vil mixed. I had this like...
But I never got that.
Well, I think it's because I had this like black tank top on, but with big
I remember
sleeves that like stuck out half a foot off my shoulders.
We're going to post a photo so people can see. I think there's one of Kara and I under your sleeve.
And it's not that it's like an awesome shirt and I freaking loved it. It was just like a statement piece. Like people were coming up to me being like, what are you wearing? I love it.
I love it. I mean, it's on brand for you. More is more.
More is more.
You could have had something ridiculous on below you, but you kept it subtle with your nice black pants.
With my black pants and the ridiculous top. But here's the thing. It was channeling the vibes of the evening. It was like, tonight, we are going to be wild.
It's going to be fun. And we had so much fun. And we actually ran into Audrey.
Yes.
Who
the Bedford wife, one of our listeners.
She won our first Lubo giveaway, actually. So it was really nice. I love when you're out and you see people that, I don't know, it just made me so happy to see our friends, run into her. We ran into lots of fun faces.
Yeah, we love getting to know our community, and it's so freaking dope to see people out in person. It's been great to get to know Audrey. And yeah, so if you're new here, we forgot to welcome you.
Hello.
But
Thanks for being here.
But we're so happy that you're here, and we're here every Thursday with you, just discovering life and learning how to live a little more on purpose.
And really uncovering topics that Sarah and I are so curious about, but they're starting to take on a new life, I feel like now. Like through A, connections with people, B is just learning these things, and C, I don't know why I just said
I want to hear what C is.
C is really opening our minds in a different way, but it's through these like educational kind of like chats and these beautiful humans that so much is coming out of it. So we hope you guys are getting a lot out of these conversations as well. And there's a lot of really cool things coming.
Yes. While we were out, the only thing I realized is like you can't have dance parties still anymore. And that's the only thing that's very hard. So you've got to like just dance at your table. That's the only thing about being out on the weekend that was challenging for me. So I really wanted to dance. But what happened instead was we ended up having a sing-along at the table.
There was a phone and a glass involved.
Yeah, we did get an extra glass from a very angry server just to put my music in.
We won't say that where that was, but
that's all good.
And shout out to Chop Halifax. We had a fabulous time there.
Yeah, we had a great time there. Fun night out. It was just nice. You know what? We haven't been out socially this summer it's been just a weird time. So it's so nice. And we feel like wild spirits again, and our hearts are on fire. We're going to be talking about this for ages. So anyways, we had to share it with you guys.
Such a fun weekend.
Ashley, also, it was your husband's birthday on Monday.
Yeah, the big 3-6.
The big 3-6.
Yeah.
Shout out to Jeff Keel. Happy birthday from everyone at Rival and Queen, which is Sarah, Mark, and Ashley.
We love you. We hope you're listening. Anyways.
We're losing it. We're not going to go on let's just dive into it because we're nuts.
We've got such an interesting conversation this week, and it's about human design, which Sarah brought to my attention actually during COVID. I remember, I think we were having a FaceTime call or a Zoom call. You had sent me a link and said, you need to fill this out. And then I went through, it was like this slideshow of describing it. And I thought, what the fuck is she going, like, what is she on to now? Like, what is it next?
I'm so excited. So guys, I discovered human design during COVID, and it basically, what it is something that is like a guide to how we're all uniquely designed to live in a way that we thrive. So it's kind of like can guide us on how we communicate, on how we make decisions. And our guest today, Victoria Jane, describes it as basically a way to support life with less hustle and more flow. And when I found it, the reason I was so excited about it is because it really resonated with me. Like I started learning about my own design, which will guide you in things like I said, like how you make decisions, but also kind of your strategy for navigating different scenarios. And it really resonated with me. Like, I mean, it was at a time when I kind of needed. I've been looking to make a change in my life anyways, especially in my career. And so this really actually.
It's kind of like learning why you are a certain way in a weird way. Do you know what I mean? Like even how you make certain decisions or how you bring certain things to work or conversations.
Or to fruition.
Yeah. And I kind of like how Victoria frames the different, there's 4 different types, but how five, sorry. I'm thinking of the 4 agreements. Is really in my brain today for some reason, but there's 5 types, and we all need each other. And we all like work together in this like very, very cool way. She frames it as a tribe.
As a tribe. So if you are new to human design, this episode is for you. Victoria is going to introduce us to what human design is. She's going to actually teach us a little bit about the different types that come up in human design. And we also dive into
ours. We really deep dive into our human design.
Our human design. And there's such a thing as a connection chart, which I never knew about. So Ashley and I flip out because we are now have decided we are officially, we were always soul sisters, but now we are officially soul sisters
aligned,
written in our human design.
We have 7, I think, that overlap.
Attraction channels. Yeah.
I think we should get a tattoo of the number 7, Sarah, just to signify our layers.
I don't have any tattoos, so we'll just work on that one. My gut says no, which, as you'll learn about in this episode, is how I make decisions.
But Victoria's talking to us from California. She had a lot of experience in Silicon Valley, being in the tech community, burnout, which a lot of people experience. And it kind of was a new thing that she discovered, like you did, human design, and how it's helped her be where she is today. It's a very cool story.
Absolutely. So human design, guys, really what we learned through all of this, it is a beautiful tool for self-love, and it also helps show you how you experience your own intuition. So we are going to let Victoria dive in and tell us all about it. If you want to connect with her, you can at victoriajane.hd and victoriajane.co. We'll tag those in the show notes for you.
And you can discover your own human design, which we highly recommend, understanding what your design is.
Your design is, and we'll link that in the show notes as well, so you can get your own chart.
Enjoy.
All right, guys.
Okay, we want to welcome Victoria Jane to the Rebel and Queen podcast. Welcome, Victoria.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
We're just too excited. We've just been talking, Sarah, you and I, about what we're going to discuss, which is human design, and we're just want to dive right in.
Yeah, Victoria, I'm so happy to have you on, because I found human design probably like a year ago, but it is like, for any of our listeners, if you're not familiar with it, you put your birthday in online. We'll have some links in the show notes for you, but you get this chart that is like, I think it's like mysterious. Like I didn't know how to decipher it. And so I've been dying to have someone on the podcast to learn all about human design. So welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. And I totally know what you mean. You pull it up and you're like, there's colors and lines and numbers and like, I don't know. And then there's words sometimes, but the words are like, don't really make sense either.
Exactly.
And I know nothing. I was only introduced to it through Sarah, who told me to go to a website, fill out this information, and it would all make sense, but it doesn't. So can you kind of tell us exactly what human design means, Victoria?
Yes. So I like to start, before I define what it is, I like to describe it as a system or tool that helps each of us live in alignment with our unique energy, and so that things can be in flow. Like super simple, just makes your life easier. Because I come from a tech background and I have very like logical, strategic, people in my life that are not into the woo-woo at all. And I think that everybody can benefit. So that's what I've landed on to get people hyped on their human design. What it actually is comprised of when you look at the chart is 4 different ancient systems. So the chakra system, the Kabbalah, the I Ching, and then astrology as well. So those all come together and like fuse into the chart that you see. And so each of these has a contribution to describing the way your energy works and the way you have certain gifts that you're meant to use in this lifetime.
Oh, I love it so much. And I think as you're introducing, I like that you kind of explained it with, it helps you live kind of more in alignment with your life or more easily. Because when people have asked me about it, I'm always trying to wrap my head around what it is. And I've found it helpful in decision making. And that's how I kind of leaned on it. So it's nice to hear you wrap it up so nicely like that.
Yeah.
And it is so applicable.
Yeah. I mean, I struggled with explaining it for a long time too, because it's like, you're like, well, it tells you about who you are, but then like, there's a lot of different layers. So we'll get into it.
I love that. So human design, each person has their own unique human design. Is that correct?
That is correct. I think somebody told me there's like 2 billion unique combinations that you can make within if you tweak all the different factors. And then of course, I've also read for twins that have the exact same chart, but they're still different people, of course, right? Because then there's like life and the people that you're friends with and where you live and all these other things. So really, we're also truly, truly unique.
Oh, I love that. And so how do you get your human design chart? You put in your birthday, your time of birth, and your location. So everyone listening can do this.
Yeah. Well, sometimes people don't know their birth time, in which case there's a few steps. So you can, if you don't know just because you haven't asked, go ask, someone who would know. You can check your birth certificate. I guess, I don't know in Canada, are they required to put on your birth certificate? Because some states in the US don't.
I think so.
I don't know. I'm not sure. But what I do know is you can just email your hospital you were born and they have to have the records.
So that's the next thing. Exactly. You ask the hospital.
Hopefully
and
your
then
parents know.
Hopefully they know, but sometimes like I work with some clients that are a little older or they come from a different country and there's no birth time. So then you can go through the more involved process of working with, a lot of astrologers will do this process called rectification, where they take like major events in your life and then map it out to what's happening so they can kind of back into it. But that's like a lot more involved and a last resort.
So the importance of when, where, obviously like the date, the year, it just all kind of comes together to give you this special chart energy chart.
Yeah. So to get more into the technical, like how it happens, because it's kind of like, wait, how do they know all these things based on my time? This is where there's a tie between the system and quantum physics. And this is where like, the skeptics are always like, well, you don't know quantum physics. I'm like, yeah, I don't, but do you? Like, how many of us are really quantum physicists, right? So this is just based on what I've studied within the human design material, and you can take it or leave it if it resonates or not. But there's subatomic particles in the universe, right? And they're all streaming through. And so based on when you're born, these neutrinos are streaming through, and that's what patterns us with our design at a very simple level. Okay. So that's why the time and location matter. It actually, the location doesn't matter so much. It's more for the time zone.
Right. I just told Ashley this because she got very mad at me.
My small town would not come up. So if anyone else has this issue, just focus on the time zone.
Exactly.
I love this. So Victoria, could you tell us a little bit actually about how you got into human design? So I think it's a great story and you kind of touched on it. Like you started in tech.
Yeah, I came across human design about 3 years ago when I was just so out of alignment in my life. And so, as I mentioned, I live in California in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley. There's a lot of tech and also just like the broader kind of vibe is like hustle culture. Like, you know, there's a lot of glory around waking up at 6 a.m. and doing your side hustle in your garage and like, you know, anyway, so that's a whole thing. And in terms of my upbringing and background, there was just a lot of emphasis on achievement and security in some ways. I have immigrant parents, so they're like, just do well in school. So I had a lot of that, and I was pushing for a long time, and I started having health issues around my Saturn return. And I was like, this is so weird. I'm so healthy. I drink a green smoothie every day. I bike to work. I meditate every day. Like, what am I doing that's causing me to have adrenal and endocrine issues? Like, this doesn't make sense. In retrospect, obviously, it was that my work was so out of alignment, and that was a really big piece of my life. But as I went through the journey of kind of healing, I also discovered human design, which painted this incredibly different picture of what flow was supposed to look like for me. I'm a projector, and in human design, they talk about, you know, projectors aren't really here to work that much, like only work 3 or 4 hours a day, which sounded insane and impossible to me. I'm like, what? I work 60-hour weeks. That's no way. And at the same time, though, like life was such a struggle for me. I felt like I was pushing all the time. I was exhausted. And my motivation was coming from this, like, I need to prove myself. I need to get validation. So when I learned human design, it just opened up a totally different idea of how I could be in flow, really, and how things could be easy that I didn't realize was an option for me. So the more I studied it, the more permission I gave myself to really be different, but also how I always was as like a kid before I picked up all of these expectations and shoulds around how I was supposed to be.
Oh
So,
my God.
yeah. So through that, I was like, well, I guess I need to share this now because it's been life-changing.
I love them. That's how you get into something. It's because your life has been so altered, like deeply altered. And okay, I got questions, obviously. You touched on being a projector, and I know nothing about it other than they aren't meant to work like laboriously or hard hours. So that must have been such a perspective shift to look at your life and be like, wait a second, can I reframe this to only work 3 hours a day? Or no wonder I'm feeling burnt out when I'm doing 12, 15-hour days.
Yeah. And I'm glad you're touching on this because I've really been thinking about how to talk about projectors in a way that doesn't make us sound like we're not supposed to work, because I've seen in the online space as human design grows, this idea that like projectors are tired all the time, they can't do that much. And it's like really not true. Like I think about some of the most accomplished projectors I know, and like Serena Williams, the tennis player, for example, is a projector, right? So this doesn't mean projectors don't have energy, but it's that we can do things in a way that's maybe more efficient or different from what the mainstream is. So like I literally was also just reading for someone, and we were talking about how she is like, I always see the easy way to do something. She was like at a law firm. She's like, I got something done that it took my colleague 4 weeks to do in like a week. And there's this conditioning that projectors have around feeling guilty that we're lazy, but it's really, we're just meant to use our energy in a different way. So I don't remember what you said that got me onto this, but that's what popped into my head.
No, I think it's good that you shared this, because my next question is really, you're talking about a projector. We're diving into human design 101. So can you tell us more? This is one of the types of human design.
Yeah.
What are the types?
Exactly. So there's 5 types, and obviously when you look at your chart, there's so many layers to it, but the first thing you want to look at is your type. It's kind of like the most basic and most important thing, in my opinion, to really know. So each type has a different way of showing up in the world. Like your energy works a different way. You have a slightly different purpose. So I like to talk about each of the types in a specific order because they actually build upon one another. So I'll come back to projectors in a second, but I think we're going there. So I'll start with manifestors.
Totally.
And manifestors are really here to start things in society. The way their energy works is really quick, and I'm going to say impulsive, and I mean it in the best, most loving way possible, even though sometimes impulsive gets a bad rap. But manifestors, your energy is so big that like when you decide to do something, you just want to go do it. And maybe if for those that are listening and you've looked at your chart and you are a manifestor, you can think of times as a kid where you were like, I just know exactly what I want to do and how I'm going to do it. And I don't need anyone to tell me what they want me to do, because like there's just such certainty. And really the reason why that is because manifestors are supposed to be taking on this kind of initiation, this leadership role where they get things going. And I like to use the analogy of like an ancient group of people. Let's say we're like all in a group wandering the forest together. The manifestor is the one that's like, ooh, let's set up camp here. Like, I just have a good feeling about this spot, right? And the way their energy works is everybody else like listens to them and hears them. And it's like, yeah, cool. Like I can get on board. So that's the manifestor purpose of really just like starting things and leading in a certain way because people pay attention to their energy. And every type also has what's called a strategy. And the strategy kind of ties to the decision-making piece you were mentioning before, Sarah.
Yeah.
Of if you can use this to share your gifts and make decisions, it should make things easier for you. So manifestors, your strategy is, there's two pieces to it. The first part is you want to initiate, which I feel like I've already said some version of that word a lot already, but it's really just like full licensing to do whatever it is that you want to do. And this is where I see if manifestors have been, shamed or guilted along the way, that they try to keep themselves small. They're like, oh no, I don't want to just like go for it or do the thing. I don't want to rub people the wrong way. But it's such a disservice to you and your community because nobody else, all the other types I'm going to talk about, the other 90+% of the population is not able to start things the way you are, where you can just go for it. So it's really like we're all like hoping that you initiate and just really let yourself do that. Now, the other piece of it is it can be kind of like, if you just go and do everything you want to and you don't let anyone know, it's kind of like people are confused, right? They're like, what just happened? So the second part of the manifestor strategy is to inform, aka tell people what you're going to be up to. So that way people can get on board if you want to. So in the tribe analogy, if it's like, hey, I want to set up camp here, they've already decided in their head, this looks like a good spot, I have a good feeling about it, but they don't just like run off and start doing it. They actually tell everybody else, like, this is what's happening. I want to set up camp here. Join me or not, all good either way. Let me give, and just to like add maybe like an example that would be helpful. Famous manifestors, they all have big visions for what they want to do in the world. So Frida Kahlo is the artist. When I think of her art, like it was kind of out there for the time, right? But if she had tried to dilute her art, like it wouldn't be nearly as meaningful, right?
Totally.
Or the author J.K. Rowling with Harry Potter, like, again, Harry Potter, very out there, but it's like shows up in full, all the vividness, all the colors, and it has had such a big impact. So those are a couple of examples there.
I love that piece about informing the manifestors. I'm not a manifestor, but I have read that about a few people that they just love to go out and create, but it's actually super, super important for them to share what they're creating with people because other people get like their energy or like insights from them sharing what they're creating.
So what happens when you're both? Because I'm a manifesting generator.
Yeah. So you're a hybrid type, and I'll talk about that in a bit, but you're not both in the sense that what both MGs and generators have in common is that you have your sacral center defined. So if you look at your chart, it's the second square from the bottom. Usually it's red and it's colored in. And so every shape has a specific energy, and the sacral energy is one of the most energetic and the strongest. And it's this energy of creation. So if you're familiar with like yoga or the chakra system, that second chakra energy of creation, creativity, the physicality of life. And so because it's so strong, even as an MG, you have like kind of a flavor of manifesting energy, but the generator part is still the more important one that you want to pay attention to.
All right. So what profiles or what one's next?
Yeah. So this is a good time. I can see Ashley is like, I'm not sure about all this. So generators and MGs, I'll talk about together. Yeah, it's coming together. Generators and MGs, I'll talk about some of the similarities first, and then I'll kind of add the MG specific flavoring. So
I'm a generator, so I'm very excited for this.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm looking at our charts and they're color-wise.
No, they're different. They're opposites.
Yeah, first. Yeah,
there's some similarities, there's some differences. So I talked a little bit about the sacral energy. So when you have a defined or colored in sacral center, your superpower is that when you're doing the things you love, you could keep doing it. It fills you up. It's like you have this inner fire, and then the things that you love are like more logs you get to throw on the fire. So, you know, with your company or with your podcast, it's like maybe it's kind of late at night, but if you're on a roll, you're like, oh my gosh, I just want to like finish this. This is so fun, right? And you're both nodding.
Totally.
I've literally never felt that way about anything, even if it's my favorite thing. I'm like, I need to take a break. I need to have a snack now, like whatever it is. Because there's not that same internal mechanism to create energy. So I'll get to projectors more in a second, but I like to point that out because I find usually that generators and MGs don't even realize that's a superpower they have. It's just like, oh, of course, I love doing this. Like, you know, you couldn't imagine not continuing to keep going, but it's really something unique to you. Yes.
I found the reason I think this resonated so much for me when I first found human design is because one of the characteristics of a generator, like you said, is this ability to create energy and and create excitement or big energy, which for me, I know I do that. And that's why
it's very clear.
It's like if you're in a room with me and I'm excited about something, we're all going to be excited together.
Yes, exactly. So famous generators, I love these examples. Famous generators are Beyonce and Oprah. Like, think about how hyped Oprah gets the crowd, right? Or like if you're at a Beyonce concert, I mean, there's more than just being a generator there, but you know, it's like there's that inner fire that starts to glow within you and then spread out around you. And it's that same energy that relates to your strategy of responding. Because, so one thing about the manifestor that I think I said was that they're the only ones that it's correct for them to just go and start something and just go for it and do it. Every other type, really, you want to check in with either yourself first or something about what's going on around you before you take action. So with responding, it's all about what that means specifically is checking in with that energy in your body that you feel, which is often located in the gut. Although for some people they feel it more in their body, or, you know, maybe they're smiling or whatever it is. But there's like a physical reaction to something that's a yes or no.
Right.
And so when you make decisions, you want to check in with, how does my body feel about this? Is it, you know, if you're trying to decide what to eat for lunch, like, are you like more drawn to the soup or the salad? And when you eat it, like, are you, you know, I see MGs, for example, eating something they like, and it's like they're like dancing around or tapping their foot. It's like there's literal energy being created from the yes.
From the food that they're eating.
Yeah.
Interesting. I can relate to this just in almost all my big life decisions. Is none of them are made logically for anyone listening.
Yeah.
But now, again, that resonated for me. Like, this is right. And I'll give an example. When I was living in Newfoundland, before I moved back to Halifax, I was like, I need a change in work. And I've been offered a job with a great startup company. They're fabulous. They're doing fantastic. But I was like really hemming and hawing, and it wasn't like easy kind of coming together and you know, arranging an employment agreement and all those things. And it never ended up coming together. And then I got a contract in Halifax and literally moved like 2 weeks later. So, oh yeah, perfect. I'll just move there. And it was, and again, it was like a 3-month contract. I was like, oh yeah, no, I'm just going to move. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
And like every time I've moved, it's usually with less than a week's notice. And I'm just like, okay, it's time to move. Like,
yeah.
But you know what I mean? It's not like a head decision. I'm not weighing pros and cons. I'm like, oh yeah, this is the right thing. Let's just go.
And well, it's interesting.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's interesting what you were saying, Victoria, about you needing those breaks. So you can't just, even if you enjoy something, you kind of need to stop and maybe. But the way I do things, I just assume everyone is like that. You know what I mean? So it's really interesting to hear that everyone is so different and works so differently. I just assume everyone is as crazy as I am sometimes. Or you moving.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's helpful Because right, so Sarah's ability to make a snap decision like that is different from your ability, because you have a gut, you have a sacral center defined, but you also have your emotional center defined. I'm pretty sure. Hang on, let me double check.
I feel like you
yeah,
know
you do.
so well because
So
of this human design.
yeah, well, so when you have your emotional center defined, and what I'm talking about now is the concept of authority. So we're talking about type and strategy. The other layer or piece to it is, cool, you know how to make decisions now, but what do you listen to when you make decisions? Do you listen to your gut? Do you listen to your instincts? And so Ashley, for you, what you also want to tune into is your emotional authority, because you are always creating emotional energy, or what's called an emotional wave. So anywhere where you're colored in your chart, you're creating energy. You're creating that sacral energy of being able to create and to build. You're also creating emotional energy, which means some days you'll wake up and you'll feel super high and like everything's amazing and everything will be a yes. But then other days things might feel like a low and everything's a no. And I don't know if I really want to do things. And it's like,
This
you
is
might
so
not,
true.
yeah, and you might not realize it. Well, I mean, some days obviously you'll notice if things are a high or a low, but when you're going through these ebbs and flows, you might not realize what you're really feeling, if it's colored by that emotional wave or not. So unlike the instantaneous decisions that Sarah can make, for you actually want to take your time and to sit on it, to sleep on it, and give yourself the ability to kind of like take snapshots of how you feel over, you know, a few days or a week or a month before you actually commit, because it's that clarity that you get with time. Yeah, that will be really helpful.
But I don't like that sometimes, Victoria, because even, for example, I'm in a group chat with some of Sarah and my friends, and they're talking about planning the ski trip in February.
Oh, I just assumed you weren't coming.
Because I don't know. I can't commit.
Well, okay.
I haven't been able to commit yet. I'm like thinking through 10 scenarios about it. I'm like, I just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Well, and how do I get over this?
And you're an MG, which makes it so we talked about generators, right? Which you have the sacral center. Wait, yeah, I can see a question.
I just have one question about the generators before we move on from them.
Yeah.
What is their working style? Because you mentioned, you touched on projectors are kind of lighter, like they're not doing 60-hour weeks.
Yeah, well, and there's like so many nuances to it, because like, for example, as a projector with an open sacral, I did really well in my office jobs, because I can actually ride other people's energy. So I'd walk into a conference room and be like, cool, I've got more energy than all of you right now, because I would ride, but then I would leave and crash. So for projectors, I think there's a wide range, especially on, you know, other factors would be like, do you like what you're doing? I mean, I didn't, but like, you know, like Barack Obama as a projector, and like I'm sure he did fine, right?
Yes.
I don't know if we want to use that example, but
so I guess
with projectors, the range of energy can vary based on whether you like what you're doing and who else's energy you're riding on, but you want to just make sure that you get the rest to balance it out. Whereas for a generator, there's typically more of that conventional work style where like you wake up with that full battery, you can go all day, like being able to consistently show up is very easy to you, because I think of the sacral centers like circadian rhythm as kind of like our normal daily routine, right? Whereas for manifestors, because I'm sure they're listening and like, don't leave me out, it's much more in spurts, because manifestors also do not have a sacral center, but they have some other form of energy going to their throat. So it's like when they want to work, they're all in, and then they need to take time to rest. And everybody's cycle can be different depending on what gates or channels they have filled out. I've heard some people, they're like, cool, I'm good for like a couple months and then I want to take a break. Some other people are like, I just launched 3 programs in a month, now I'm going to take a week, like whatever it is. But it's much more on and off.
That makes sense. Okay. And that makes sense because the generators create their own energy. All right.
Yeah, exactly. So with MGs, you have the sacral center, you have like, you feel that excitement towards things, right? But you also have that kind of quickness that the manifestor has, but it's like the proportions of it, the sacral is much louder and stronger. So that's always what takes the lead. But you'll have that quickness where you'll get really excited about something and then just as quickly get not excited by it. Or you won't know about how you feel about something until it actually comes up, because you might, you know, you might be excited today, but you might not be excited in February, right? So there's a few things that I see with MGs. One is that often there are a lot of different interests and passions that MGs have, and they can get a lot of misunderstanding or judgment from the people around them, often who just want the best. That are like, but why are you changing your mind again? Or like, you just bought that camera to get into photography. Why are you into pottery now? Like, why don't you stick with something? Yeah. And the thing I like to remind MGs is nobody else can feel what it feels like in your body to be so bummed out by the thing that you're no longer excited by. So other people literally can't understand, like, why are you changing your mind again? When in your experience, you're like, oh my God, I literally can't make myself do this. I'm totally over it.
Yeah, that seems very true.
That's
Once I've made my mind up, because sometimes it might be a bit more difficult to understand how I'm feeling. It takes me a while to get there, but once I've made my mind up, it's made up.
Yeah. So there's a few pieces. Like, I love that you brought up the trip with friends, because just as an MG in general, like, you might change your mind. Like, there's this, like, okay, it's in February, it's a long time from now, I might feel differently about it then versus how I feel now. But then also you have your emotional waves, so like, you would also just want to take your time. But the advice that I like to give MGs, and also to the people in their life that want to support them, is like, just knowing this about them, right? Like, oh, like, maybe Ashley can't commit to the trip, and like, go ahead and plan it, and if she can come last minute, great. But like, so that way you don't have to feel bad about, you know, forcing yourself to go if you don't want to go, or like holding other people up from moving forward. If that's an option.
It's an option.
But it's interesting, the kind of like emotional decision making, because that's what it is. It's like, well, what if I really in my heart don't want to go, or if I really want to go and then I don't go? And I don't consider myself an indecisive person, but I don't know how this is much different.
Yeah. Well, I think the idea, the label of like, oh, I'm bad at making decisions, or I'm indecisive, those are coming from this assumption that there's a right way to make decisions. And human design very much, right? It's like, who decided
like whatever's
that,
right for you.
Yeah. And human design like illustrates there are so many different ways to make a decision, both like based on timeline, like how long you take, versus what part of your body you listen to, versus like, should it be logical or not? And like, there's multiple authorities in human design. There's 7, and there's even more nuances than that, but none of them are your mind. So I think, Sarah, there's something earlier you're saying about like, oh, the way I make decisions isn't logical. So there are so many different parts of our body that are intelligent, and like, the slowest part is the mind. Like, a simple example, right? Let's say you touch something hot and you pull away. Your reflexes are what's pulling you away, right? Your body sensed it, and it happens like that. If you relied on your mind to do it, it would be like, oh, well, this is hot, let me like bend my elbow, let me pull back. Like, your finger would already be fried, right? So if we start to think about that, and then overlaid on all these bigger things that we've made really complicated with all of our thinking, it becomes a lot simpler of like, oh, maybe, you know, I can just trust my gut, because you wouldn't, like, you have the exact design you need to flow through life.
Interesting. Okay. I love that. So the magic of the manifesting generators is they actually can create energy like the generators, but also have the ability to create projects and things.
Yeah, it's like the MG, because of both the sacral energy and that kind of like quick into lots of different things, allows them to be multi-passionate and really have this non-linear path. Whereas like the generator is like, I'm going to build this thing and it's going to be my thing. The MG is much more like, I'm going to explore all these different things and it's going to come together in a unique way, and let me show you it. But where MGs can kind of, like I was saying before, where they can feel maybe held back is if people are expecting them to have this really like logical path that makes sense, when really it's much more about exploring everything.
Oh, such good information. I love that.
Yeah. So should we do projectors?
Let's do projectors.
Yeah. Okay. So in the tribe analogy, right, the manifestor was like, let's set up camp. And then the generators and MGs hear somebody like say this, and then they feel in their gut like, ooh, yeah, this place looks awesome. There's a stream right by, super excited. And they help build the village. And then the projector is the one who's sort of standing back and watching everything and is saying like, well, we should move things over there. And why don't you like pull some more rocks over here? And it's all about guiding the energy, right? So projectors don't have to be like so much in the trenches doing the work. Like they don't necessarily want to build and create in the same way, although projectors certainly can, you know, create businesses and all that sort of thing. But there's this flavor of how do I help make things more efficient, or how do I see things in a different way? And where can I offer that insight? So because of that, you know, overall, the purpose of a projector is to guide in some way. And the strategy then becomes, well, how do you guide in a way that's really efficient, that isn't misusing your energy? Because projectors often get caught in this trap of, well, I see other people so clearly, like, why don't people see me for how brilliant I am? And feeling like kind of bitter for being ignored, or like our, you know, all the great advice we think we have, no one's listening to it. And that's really coming often when projectors feel this, it's because they're trying to seek validation. They're trying to push it rather than, am I really being discerning about where I'm actually sharing things, and is it ready to be appreciated? So the strategy for projectors is to wait for the invitation.
Okay.
And this is where people,
I feel like I know a lot of people like that.
What is well, what's an invitation?
Right.
That's what I'm wondering.
Totally. So a lot of people hear that and they're like, okay, so I can only do something if somebody asks me to do it, which isn't true, because I mean, it sounds really like disempowering, right? It's much more about the energetic invitation of, am I going to be seen and appreciated for whatever it is that I have to offer? So it doesn't mean you can't apply for a job. You could totally do that. But when you're in the interview process and talking to people, do you really feel like the people you're talking to see your gifts? Do they really appreciate whatever unique skills you bring to the table? Versus, you know, maybe you're there and you're talking to all these people and they're like, yeah, great, cool, we need someone, right? So it's quite subtle. It's all about how do you feel in your body, right? Like, what are you picking up around being appreciated? And you could even be, let's say, hired one day, feel super appreciated, but over time, maybe you've been at your job for like 2 or 3 years and you're feeling like, you know, maybe you didn't get the promotion or whatever, and you start to feel not appreciated. The invitation that was there could you know, dissolve over time.
Okay, interesting. I didn't know that about projectors. Okay, the invitation.
Yeah. And another thing I'll say is there's a lot, just to like really emphasize for projectors, there's so much you can do to get the invitation, right? Like you can start your website, you can post on Instagram. You want to, obviously you should tell people what you're doing, right? It's like you want to hang the open sign on your metaphorical shop to get people to come to you. But it's also about knowing that if you're in a situation where you feel not appreciated, not heard, that's not a bad thing. It just means that, oh, this isn't really the right spot for me. So it really helps reframe failure in a different way, because projectors can take it sometimes as like, oh, well, I don't have anything of value, right? And instead it's like, you're meant to guide. Don't worry, that's your birthright. But it's about finding the right crowd that you can guide.
Ooh, it sounds like we all need each other in some way. And I guess that's why there's only so many, and everyone kind of brings something different to the tribe.
Exactly. No, totally. I mean, the proportions of how many of each type there are like exactly what we need to build society, right? There's like 8-ish% of the population's a manifestor, 70% is generators and MGs because we need to get things done, and then 20%-ish are projectors, and then 1% are reflectors, which we can get to next.
My sister is a reflector, so I'm super interested.
Oh my gosh, I would love to hear I'll talk a little bit, and then I'd love to hear if you have any reflections on your sister.
Yeah.
So reflectors are the last type, and the thing about their charts, if you look at them, is all of the shapes are white, whereas for everybody else, there's at least 2 centers colored in. Mm-hmm. And any center that's white is where it's like energy can shine in and it gets like bounced back out. So reflectors are often also called lunar beings, because if everybody else is shining their energy outward, the reflector doesn't have to do anything to shine. It just reflects back like the moon does, right?
Okay.
So energetically, what this means is that reflectors really have this purpose of, in the tribe, sharing what's going on for them, and that being a reflection to everybody else of what's going on around them. So in the like village analogy, right, the reflector is the one who's just like hanging out with everyone throughout the day. You know, maybe they're building a little bit, and maybe they're talking to the projectors a little bit, and maybe they're hanging out with the manifestors, and then at the end of the night, when we're all, you know, gathered around the campfire and reflect and just like telling stories, the reflector is the one that's standing in the center of the circle saying like, here's what happened today, and this is how I'm feeling, this is what I noticed. And we all, as we listen, everybody else gets to have a deeper understanding of the truth of themselves. And so, yeah, so the reflector is very, I mean, it's just so special and so different from like everyone else, right? Where they're meant to participate in life deeply. And it's like, it can be kind of confusing if you don't realize you're a reflector, because they might feel like, I identify with everyone. You know, it's like really hard to put yourself in a personality test, or even say like, you know, I love X, like I'm thinking about like your sister as a little girl. It's like, I love horses, or I love ballet, or I love whatever. It's like, she probably felt like she loved everything depending on who she was hanging out with.
Right. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. That's so cool.
Is that
well, how I would like, so my sister's a makeup artist, and she spends all day like talking to so many different people. And one of the things that I find really interesting is when we get into subjects, I'll see them from a different perspective. Like she always has such a, I'll tell her about a story, and it's right. Like I can hear it back from a clearer perspective almost.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also, so Sarah, you have a defined crown and ajna, so the two centers in your head, which means you have a consistent way of thinking about things. Like the way your mind works, it's like, you know, you're really good at seeing things, like getting lessons from all the different experiences that you've had. Whereas for a reflector, obviously her head centers would be open. Mm-hmm. So it's like she can see things from all different points of view. And it's not that you can't obviously like understand them, but she literally can feel like she thinks like someone else.
Yes, and I totally get that with her. Like she's able to carry on a conversation and relate so well to every single person who comes in to her studio. But then also I find through our conversations, introduces me to so many other concepts that I wouldn't have even considered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's what's coming through to me is like if you think one way and 10 other people think a different way, she's going to understand each one for a different reason. Okay, I like that. That's a very cool trait, I feel like, to think. It's very open.
Totally, like so open. And basically it's like, as she encounters, or as reflectors encounter people or situations, it's like you become that in a certain way, right? And then you step away and, you know, when you're by yourself again, and you can start to feel the difference. But in the moment, it's so important to let yourself deeply participate, because that's what allows the reflector to really step into their purpose of being this mirror back to everybody else. And so the strategy, I know, I can't wait for you to talk to your sister.
I know.
So the strategy for reflectors is a little different. It's actually to wait an entire lunar cycle before making any big decisions.
Whoa, that is so different.
Mm-hmm.
So
because
is that a month? You mean like a full moon cycle?
I mean, it's roughly a month. I guess it would be like the 28 days of the lunar cycle. And the reason why specifically lunar cycle is because they're lunar beings, right? So they're so open in their chart, and there's that connection to the way their energy works that's like the moon, where you're just reflecting back. Mm-hmm. And as the moon goes through its rotation in the sky, it's activating different gates in the chart. So it's not like whatever your chart is that you pulled up based on your birth time, you are always that. But as things move in the sky, right, there's different kind of like energies we can tap into. So for the reflector, your sister might feel like a generator one day, and then she might feel like a manifestor another day. And there's all these lessons that are happening with the energy that give her like a little like piece of the puzzle. And then once you go around the full lunar cycle, it's like, okay, I felt into every possible variation of what it would be like. Now let me make a decision with that clarity. So it's sort of, I mean, there's a similarity with the emotional wave that we were talking about for you, Ashley, except it's in that you want to take some time and that's how you get to the clarity. But instead of emotional energy of like that wave for the reflector, it's literally feeling like different versions of what's going on for that month.
Crazy.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
This has given me so much clarity on my sister, because I'm just even thinking right now of what we sometimes get into a fight about.
It's time.
It's like, well, no, it's not that. Like, one thing I know that consistently throughout our lives we sometimes fight about is, like, I have a lot of energy, and if you put me in a room with people and it's like a party, like, I'm excited, I have a big energy, but sometimes she wants to be able to have a big energy, but not all the time, and I'm probably blocking her from that, where I need to like let her have that experience of being like that huge open, like amping up energy center. Cool.
That's really interesting. When you say she, like, do you feel, so like, I guess I'm curious how you would go about that. Would you just kind of like hang back and let her take the center stage?
But consciously, probably.
More so consciously. And it's not that like,
because you're so excited.
I'm so excited. Like, I'm just like, I'm like a
which is like your guts, like, I just want to,
naturally.
But what I think is she's not always like that she wants to be like, I'm thinking if we're like standing in a circle, like telling stories or jokes, like I'm going to tell a story, I'm going to be making jokes, I'm going to be like too loud. But like sometimes she has a story to tell, and if I'm not cognizant of that, I'm just like barreling over the time, like over her. And I think paying attention to that, so when she's feeling that way, she's able to express herself.
Totally. Oh my gosh, that's such a beautiful insight. I'm really excited for you to review with your sister later.
So
there's another piece around this, which is like, you know, you hear like wait a whole lunar cycle, and it's like, oh my God, like who can wait a month to make a decision? And again, this is all about reframing that everybody has a different process and a different timeline, and there's no right or wrong here. But like, as a collective, we are only as like whole and integrated as we are as the most how do I say this? Like, as a collective, right? If we really want to have all of this diversity and all of these different experiences, we need to allow for every single experience, which could be letting the reflector taking a month to make a decision, right? I think of like an orchid in the rainforest, and like if there's all this extinction happening, like there's nothing wrong with the orchid, it's because we're cutting down all the trees, right? So how do we actually give space to all these different experiences?
So as you're describing all these different kind of types and traits of the types, how do you as a coach, a human design coach, help people kind of change maybe their habits or their way they're doing things to understand more about themselves?
Yeah, such a good question. I mean, the first layer is just getting people to understand this is who you really are, you know, whether that's the way your energy works or the timeline or making decisions, and saying like, that's valid, you know, like maybe you were raised to do things that your gut was not excited about, or maybe you were raised to push really hard. Like, you know, there's so many different variations of it, but it's that first step of like, cool, you know who you have the potential to be and who you really are, and this is how you're acting, and what's that gap, right? So there's like a knowledge piece of it, and then there's the helping people to practice actually tuning into their own intuition, which can be so different. So for one person, it might be letting them, you know, let's say it's like a manifestor with a connection to their emotional center. They need to be able to talk out everything that's going on with them, their whole wave, to decide what's right. Whereas if I'm working with like a generator or an MG without an emotion, so just without an emotional center defined, with just their sacral center defined, it's about getting them embodied and feeling into their gut and trusting that. And maybe they've had, you know, chronic illness, and they're like, I don't feel my gut, my whole body is numb. So like we work together on that. And then also getting over maybe the guilt of like, well, can I just do what's fun? I don't know. Like, I was told that play comes after work and it's supposed to be a struggle. Like, there's so many different pieces, but I think at the highest level, it's like awareness, understanding the acceptance of who you really are, and then the reprogramming and integration of all of the limiting beliefs that might stand in the way of actually living your design. In terms of content, I mean, in terms of like actual like things in life, you know, I've spent time working with helping people call in partnerships and calling in new careers and just like being more in flow with like it's really helpful for anxiety and manifesting to know your design. So it kind of runs the full spectrum in terms of what the material is, but the energetics of it are all the same.
It's, as you're saying this, like for me, it's just coming in so clear that this is just a beautiful tool for self-acceptance and allowing ourselves to kind of flourish in our unique way, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is so dope. So
I know what you're going to ask.
No, you don't.
Okay. I thought you were going to ask about the attraction channel that you and I have.
Oh, yeah, no, I am going to ask about that. But before Victoria told us it was a connection chart, which we need to hear about. But before I ask about that, the one other thing I wanted to ask about, we just talked about types as like the first thing that you can kind of learn about in human design. The authority, that is how we make our decisions, right? Is that kind of like, what is the authority?
Yeah, so the authority is the voice of your intuition that's unique to you. So where it gets a little like this, it's not me-see, like where for MGs and generators, your strategy of responding includes listening to your gut. So it's like authority is kind of rolled in there. Whereas for the other types, manifestors, projectors, and reflectors, their strategy doesn't include anything about their authority. So like I wait for the invitation, but what do I tune into to actually know if there's an invitation? For me, I listen to my spleen, but for a different projector, it might be emotional again, or maybe it's there's something called self-projected, or maybe they're a mental projector. So that's why, yeah, that's a good question of kind of teasing apart what they really mean. Strategy is what you want to follow in terms of what you share, and then authority is what you listen to within yourself.
Okay, and so authority, I think, and now I'm understanding this in a new way for generators and manifesting generators, our strategy and authority is kind of aligned with our gut instincts. But for other
because for all generators and MGs, you all have the sacral center. So the only two authorities generators and MGs can have are emotional or sacral, because the energy is so strong, and you obviously have a sacral. The only thing stronger than that is an emotional authority in terms of the energy that comes through. And even then, you still are listening to your gut underneath the emotional wave.
Okay. So cool. I love that. That's so your intuition. But it's nice to know where to start if you're getting your chart. Like, learn about your type, learn about your strategy, learn about your authority. I love the authority, your intuition.
I mean, you could work with just practicing listening to your strategy and authority and following it for a long time, for years potentially. And I would say you don't even really need to know more than that to live out the rest of your chart, because we'll talk more about like some of your gates and channels in a second, but that's like the fun seasoning on top. But if you're listening to what your intuition is telling you, you'll live out those gifts naturally.
So cool. I love that. So you can start, if you want to try out living kind of in your design, you can start listening to your own intuition. And that's like a starting block.
Yeah. And there's so much around, like, just by demographics, there's a lot of generators and MGs, and I'm sure people listening probably like you as people, so they might be very similar as well. And there's so much around like actually feeling and honoring your sacral center, your gut, right? It's like, do you really believe that it's okay to just like dance around and have fun? And if you're tired and you don't want to work, do you really let yourself not? Because the thing with having a sacral center is you can push yourself. You do have a lot of energy, but just because you can, show up to the friends event that you committed to or do the extra project doesn't mean that it's actually in your highest interest.
Well, I find whenever I go against that gut is when it's not good work. Sometimes you want to keep working late and you're jamming, like we were talking about earlier, you're into that and you have so many ideas, and then other times you think about doing it or doing work and you just know instinctively, I don't feel like doing this, and I'll close my laptop or do whatever and just be like, no, I know this will be terrible and not a good outcome.
Can I give you the clearest example of that?
For me?
No. Oh. For me, for this like gut instinct of work. I remember when I was in university, I was like hungover one Saturday, but had this stupid art paper due the next week. And I was like, screw it. Like, I'm just going to go get it done on a Saturday. I'll get it done early. I didn't want to go. I was like, God damn it. So I walked to school. A car drives by, splashes me in water. And I was like, fuck. And then I keep going to the university, go there to like work on it. And my computer got stolen.
Oh no.
Yeah. And then I went home just like pissed and like furious. But it was a day that I like didn't want to go, and I felt like I still remember the feeling in my body. Well, I didn't know about this.
No, I know,
but that's that example. It's like I didn't want to go, but I pushed myself to do it, and it really bit me in the ass.
Yeah, I mean that's extreme. I hope it doesn't always have to be like, but you know what? Honestly, there are, just because it's like going against your gut, it doesn't always result in something so acute. I would argue that there is a price to pay eventually, right? Maybe you chronically like don't have a boundary with someone, and it like results in this underlying stress or like resentment. Like, you know, it's like it doesn't serve anyone to go against your gut, even if it feels hard in the moment. Think about maybe like, you know, there's a conflict with a friend where they're like, I can't believe like you know, you broke that promise or whatever. But when you can do it from a place of integrity and love and say like, you know what, I feel like shit today, and I know that you as a friend wouldn't want me to, you know, make me like do this, and then I really don't want to, and I'll make it up to you and support you in other ways. We give other people the permission to live in their truth too.
Right. Oh. When we accept each other.
You're really good at this though, because you'll tell me sometimes, Sarah will ask me something, and I don't know if you know that I have a hard time thinking through things, but she'll just tell me, you don't have to decide right now, just like think about it, like let me know, it's fine, like don't make any stress around deciding. And I'm like, you're right, I can't decide right now, so thank you. Thank you. This is why our channels are so aligned, Sarah.
Tell us what a connection chart is, or what is it that you called it?
Yeah, it's a connection chart. Okay, so you know, you have your chart, and then other people have their charts, and what you can do basically is like place them on top of each other. And at the highest level, right, we can all feel when there's a certain energy in the room. Like, you know, we can feel when someone's really happy or sad, or like someone's just like a genuinely like positive person to be around. And we have also had the experience of like, oh, I like this person, right? And sometimes it's because they have the same things in their chart. So it's like, oh, you and me, we're both the same. We both, I don't know, I'm just going to pick something random. Like, we're both really good at like talking about what we love and like getting people like really hyped on things. And then there's another kind of attraction, which is, if you look at the chart, there's lines and numbers coming out of the shapes, and each gate or line is a gift. And when two gates come together, they create what's called a channel. So every gate is whole and complete in and of itself. But when two gates come together, there's this additional alchemy or like additional superpower. So there's another kind of like dynamic that can happen when you meet someone and they have the other half of a channel, where it's like, oh, you have something and I have something, and we come together and we create more together. So that's what I was talking about when I was talking about your combined chart, is you have a lot of this dynamic, which is called an attraction channel, right? It's like you have two ends of like a magnet that come together. And it's so fun because you're like, great, like we get to create something new together. And what I was saying before we started recording is you have so many, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, you have 7 attraction channels. So it's like together you just create so much magic.
We're gonna take over the world.
But I feel like that's so true, because we're so drawn to each other. Like as soon as we met, we became such good friends quickly, and yeah, we love to create things. It's so fun.
And we get excited about the same things. Like you're like, want to do this? Most of the time it's yes. But I think that, I don't know. That's so nice. So heartwarming.
But it also works well, because the times when we're not on the same page or something, we're each like, okay, no. And we're just like, not for you. Walk away.
I do the whole energy aspect, and Sarah has a lot of energy, always feels energy, brings energy, and I'm kind of right there sometimes too. But I feel like when we're together sometimes, that's one thing I think is so great about working together and having such a great friendship, is like we get so excited and so amped about so many things, and I don't feel like that with anyone else, but this makes sense.
Yeah, because you're both like, wait, we can do something with this topic, with this situation, whatever it is. And I mean, I can talk about a couple of them right now. Like, so one of them, so Ashley, you have this natural ability to like be really good at like knowing how to use resources, whether that's like planning or I see Sarah nodding like hardcore. It's like,
I'll
just
find someone that knows someone to do something.
Yeah, just like super savvy, right? And then Sarah, you have the ability, well, so Ashley, that gift is in what's called your ego center. And the ego center in human design is where like ambition and willfulness and like wanting to be first and really good at things, like all of that energy lives. So resources is obviously a piece of that. And then Sarah, you have the other half of the channel in your throat, which is being able to use your voice to actually direct how to use these resources. So it's like together, this is like a really great like working partnership channel where it's like one person's like, I know how like I want to do things. The other one's like, cool, let me like organize and get like use my expression and influence to make it happen.
So cool. That is perfect.
I think that's very
Very accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's another one that, well, actually there's so many. So which one do I want to talk about?
There's 7.
Yeah, I know. There is also another one about, Ashley, you have this ability to like tell if something's really good or not. It's like, I think of the art curator or whatever that can tell if like it's a real piece of art versus like a fake. It's just like you have this depth where you're like, this is good, this isn't, right? You can sense that intuitively, instinctively.
Very true.
Yeah.
I can spot a fake purse a mile away.
Stop.
I can.
Okay.
I mean, like in that sense, and then also probably you carry that sense with you wherever you go, right? In terms of whatever, I don't know, projects or information comes your way. And then the other half of that channel is the Sarah's ability to take that, like when you come together and you provide your instinctive awareness, Sarah has the ability to like express with skills, like whether or not something is like has the credentials to be good. So when you come together, there's
like a verification.
Yeah, it's like you have both the skills and the depth to really like have something be good.
So cool.
Mm-hmm.
Holy cow. This is so neat because I didn't know that this was even a thing, like our connection.
Yeah. And this applies to like all kinds of relationships too, right? It's like parent-child, friendships, partnerships, business partners. And it can be so helpful of like, okay, so this is how you work. This is how I work. This is what we create together.
Right.
That'd be a cool thing to do with your business partners or your teams and things too, because you always do those personality tests,
right?
But this seems more in depth.
I mean, when I started learning about this, I was like, this should be what, if I were to start another company, I want everyone's chart because I want to understand how they work to help support them create their best way. Like when I learned this was like, that was first where my mind went.
Is that something you do as part of the coaching, is to kind of work with groups or organizations, or is it more kind of individuals?
Yeah. So people have been asking me about doing like group / business events, and I love doing them. It's not something that I've officially, like I don't have anything on my website about it, but I do couple readings all the time. And then as that has kind of taken off, people are like, yeah, come do my team. And it can be super helpful. Like I know there's one team that I did a thing for, and some people are really scared to like sell. And so being able to look at each person's chart and say like, okay, you're really good at selling in this way by being really excited by what you love, versus, for somebody else, it might be like, hey, you're going to do better if you research a lot and then come across as like a teacher. Right. And it takes a lot of that. Yeah.
That's so cool.
So that's just one example.
And I think that also shows why, people with different ways of like thinking and personalities make up such a good team, because everyone just brings these different skills, and coming back to the tribe thing again.
Totally.
It's why everyone can gel together.
Okay, I have 2 questions, but they're small ones, but I got to get them out.
So
I never really knew what these lines and numbers were on the chart. So the lines that we see are gates. And you said those are like gifts that we have? Okay. And then what are the numbers?
The numbers are the same thing. So the numbers that you see running down the sides of your chart are the same numbers that are in the picture.
Okay.
And each gate has a name, but it also has a number. So like I always look at the number to say like, oh, you have, gate 45 or whatever. And that's just a way to know which gate we're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And so those are our gifts. So if we want to look into those, just research the ones that are listed.
Yeah, exactly.
So cool.
Sometimes I will kind of throw out a word of caution. If you go on Google or even YouTube sometimes, some of the language in like traditional human design is quite stern. So just if you read it and you're like, I don't know if this makes sense, or you're a little put off by it, like don't feel pressured to, just take what works for you and leave what doesn't.
Yeah, so there's also a profile aspect to human design, and my profile is hermit opportunist, which sounds like a hermit sounds terrible, but when I learned about it, it is fairly accurate into how I like to.
Totally. I prefer for the second line instead of hermit, I prefer the natural.
The natural, okay.
Yeah.
You're just that more.
Yeah, you're just natural. and this gets more into like the origins of human design, but the person who channeled the system, he was a manifestor, and part of his intention was to be a little like jabby with the language, right? It's like, wait for the invitation, respond, like all these things kind of like challenge the way we think about success in the world, right? And on purpose, because he's like, well, hold up, like you don't have to go out and chase, you don't have to go out and do things.
Right.
If you just trust that like your energy as a generator is so magnetic, and when you're fired up it brings things to you, all you have to do is respond, right? But some of the words like the profile words, there's the martyr, what are some other ones? Some of them aren't quite as intense, but the martyr is like another
I know
one.
I saw that one. That one wasn't so fun. Yeah
It's not bad. They're all good. Don't worry.
They're all good is the thing. Yeah, I think that's I'm glad that you said that. So if people are looking this up online, everything's good. Like
yes,
and it's more about
everything is good.
Magic. Oh, frigging love that. Victoria, the last thing that I wanted to ask you was, how do we keep learning about this? So you're online, we can search, we can work with you. Tell us a bit more how people can go forward.
Yeah, so there's so many ways to keep learning. So obviously you can find me on Instagram. I'm posting little stories and posts just to kind of keep the education ongoing. If you want to go deep into it and you're like, I just want to know everything about me so I can live my design, I do readings. And then for anybody who is in any kind of position where you're working with people, let's say you run a team, or you just want to learn way more about human design and you want to learn how to use this to coach people, I also am launching a coaching certification for people to go like 12 weeks, study with me, and be able to talk to all of the people in your life about like, this is your design and what does that mean? So those are for the people who really want to go deeper and get that study.
I feel like that's me, because I just like want to know about everyone's design.
Do it so you can tell me more.
I have 7 people's charts saved. Because I love to and I don't know anything. I only know about me a little bit, but
I think you care so much that it's helpful for you to understand how to accurately communicate with people in the best way.
And not upset.
Like you care. Yeah.
That's
great. I think that would be great for you.
The best way to do it though is like you start pulling up charts from people and you start seeing like a little part of their chart and how they act, and like you start connecting the dots.
I love that.
And you, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
No, it's just you said you're on Instagram and you post a lot on there. So what is your Instagram?
Yes, I am at victoriajane.hd.
I love that. And Victoria, just so that I remember this, when we are starting to learn about this, focus on our type first, then strategy, then authority. Those are kind of the 3 big things to dive into.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah. And even when I coach people now, sometimes they'll come to me with this like big complicated problem and they're like, what do I do? And I'm like, well, like, how does it feel in your body? Like, are you feeling, and if you look at, certain charts will also tell you what your not self theme is. And so for example, a generator or an MG might be feeling frustrated or like low energy. And it's like, well, when you're feeling that way, that's not really how you should be feeling if you're in flow. So maybe it's just time to say no to that thing. And it's like, it's a lot simpler sometimes than we get it all worked up in our heads to be.
Oh, love that.
That makes so much sense. Victoria, what is lighting you up right now?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, so this last weekend I was out on a hike, and in California, as I'm sure you've heard, there's been all of these wildfires. So I've just really been appreciating when I can get outside and enjoy nature. I have a dog, so it was really nice I know the animals are the best, just like keeping me really present, because sometimes I can get lost in my own thoughts too.
Oh, nature. It's such a beautiful time. I'm sure it's cooling off in some respect, but not as much as here.
Yeah, that's
awesome. A lovely time.
Yeah, is it already like kind of snowy where you are?
No.
It is not snowy, but it's fall. Like we need coats on all the time.
Like the leaves are
like
changing colors.
Uh-huh.
It's pretty, but
Yeah.
we need a sweater now.
Victoria, last thing before we wrap, we are going to play a game with you. It is called Queenie Grams. It is a made up game, so real easy. All you do is pick a number between 1 and 99. I'm going to ask you a question, then Ash is going to go, then I'm going to go. We'll do a little round robin.
Okay, wait, what does the number have to do with the question?
Well, it's just how we find the question.
Usually we have cards that you can pick a card, but
we're remote.
I have my number. I'm ready.
Tell us.
68.
68. Ooh. I don't know if we've ever had anyone pick 68. Let me see. Ooh. All right. What was your favorite movie when you were a kid?
Okay, when I was really little, it was 101 Dalmatians.
Oh, so
this is
good.
like when I was like 5 or maybe even younger. I don't know. And what's crazy is I had one of my, she's a psychic medium basically. And she was like, you need to rewatch Disney movies to get back in touch with like your childhood sense of like joy and play. So I actually rewatched 101 Dalmatians like 2 weeks ago. And aside from like the 1960s sort of like misogynistic racist components, it was actually really lovely. still holds up.
Oh, I love that. That's so fun. I love these questions about our childhood. Ashley, would you like to pick a question for me? For you?
Do you want to know my favorite childhood movie?
I would love to know that as well.
No, but the one that's going to mind that I just love so much was The Parent Trap. Oh. Like the original Parent Trap, and then I got into the remake, which I don't know how many times I've watched that movie, but
the Lindsay Lohan one. I've watched that one so many times.
Me too.
So cute.
That is a really good one.
I would love to rewatch it.
Okay. I'm free Friday night. All right, pick a number for me.
17.
17. All right, here we go. Oh, this one's an easy one, Ash. Hair up or hair down? If you could only wear it one way for the rest of your life, which way is it going to be?
For the rest of my life?
The rest of your life, hair up or down?
Oh.
Because I don't know, I feel like there's ways.
Question.
I know. I was going to say 50-50, that I'd like to do half and half, but Sarah's saying I have to choose.
I'm giving you an ultimatum.
I'm going to say up because I'm lazy sometimes. If I don't do it, I could just do a bun, ponytail, and that would just be sweet. More.
What about you, Victoria? What's your favorite?
Well, I like hair down, but then I'm like, what if my hair isn't washed that day? So I feel like I'd have to really invest in like the hats and scarves.
Oh, that's smart, actually.
Yeah.
I'm going down. My hair turns into like dreadlocks. It's fine.
It just feels so good to put it on. I can't forget that feeling.
Oh yeah. Okay. I'm with you. All right. I'm gonna go with 23 for some reason. Ooh, I haven't had this one in a while. What are the 3 essentials that you have in your fridge or cupboards? Victoria, you're gonna have to answer this as well, so you can get thinking on that bad boy. I always go with wine. I'm really into like old cheeses right now, like delicious hard cheeses. I want those. And the other thing I'm into in the fall are green beans. Like I'm just thinking those nonstop.
Raw?
Yeah, with hummus. Victoria, what about you? What's in the fridge and cupboard?
Yeah, well, so I don't know if you've heard about the bean protocol, but I have been, no. Okay.
What?
So I've been doing it for about a year to help heal with all of the endocrine adrenal stuff I've had. And basically, long story short, beans have a lot of soluble fiber that help carry out like old hormones. So it can be really helpful for rebalancing. But I was paleo for like 3 or 4 years before this because I was trying to balance all my blood sugar stuff, right? So I hadn't eaten a bean in like years before I started this thing, and I was so scared. But anyway, so that's the context. So beans right now in the cupboard. I love almond butter, so some kind of almond butter, and then some sort of chocolate, dark chocolate.
Ooh, I love that.
I'm so with you on the nut butter.
Ash, give me your 3.
Nut butter for sure. I buy different kinds. It just goes with everything. You can put it. It's a meal. I've really been into eggs lately because my naturopathic doctor told me to eat a lot more protein, especially in the morning. So eggs, nut butter, I have to have, and coffee. Does that count?
Definitely.
Okay. I can't not have coffee.
I'll just be drunk all the time and tired. We'll be caffeinated. And rare to go.
And lots of protein.
I freaking love it. Victoria, this has been so nice to have you on and learn all about human design. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. It's been so good. And I can't wait to learn more.
Yeah, are you hooked, Ash?
I feel like we've only kind of scratched the surface, and now I need to understand more, I think, about myself before I kind of learn about the whole, shebang scheme of things. Yeah. So thank you. Your perspective was super helpful.
Thank you so much. It's been so fun to talk to both of you. I loved going over your charts, and it's always just such a pleasure to share human design.
That's awesome. Victoria, what's your website? Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, it's victoriajane.co, not com, just .co. Yep. And yeah, you can get a hold of me there, book a reading, or I also have just a bunch of podcasts that I've been on. Obviously, I'll link this one too, but if you want to keep listening, there's more resources to learn as well.
Awesome. We'll put all of that in the show notes for you guys. All right. Thanks, Victoria.
Thank you.